This is the Mike LaPetri Show. Nassau County property taxes are way too high. That's why you need Reassessment and Evaluation Services, Inc., the #1 tax grievance provider that offers personal service and high success rates. Grieve your taxes now before the deadline on March 1st, 2024. Call today for more info, 516-742-5180, or apply online at reassessmytaxes.com. Winters Brothers Waste Systems, the premier solid waste and recycling company on Long Island, servicing commercial, residential, industrial, and municipal customers across Nassau and Suffolk County. Locally owned and operated since the 1950s, over the last 70 years, Winters Brothers has built a network of regional operations, including multiple hauling locations, 6 recycling centers, and 9 transfer stations. Winters Brothers, solid and sound financial footing, a talented and professional team, top shelf equipment with top-notch service to Long Islanders. Go to wintersbrothers.com for more information today. Oh my God. We have Skye Ostreicher in the building, the political personality and founder of In the Room Media. Hi, Skye.
Hey, Mike, former Assemblyman Mike LaPetri, the Honorable Mike LaPetri. I'm thrilled to be here on the famous Mike LaPetri Show.
Perfect, just like we rehearsed. Thank you so much. Great job. For all of you who don't know, you can follow Skye on Instagram at The Political Personality, and her website, intheroommmedia.com, where she releases Skye's Scoops every week, every Friday,
Every Friday, because everyone wants to be in the room where it happens.
In the room where it happens. If you want to know what's going on in local politics, state politics, just politics in the New York City, all over, Skye Ostreicher is there to be the one to tell you what's happening behind the scenes. I think that's what's so cool about yourself, Skye, is being the political personalities. You're someone that really wanted to showcase more than just what the media is showing, correct?
Yeah, that's right, because, we live in this polarizing political climate where it's very divisive, especially on social media, and that's where the wildest voices are amplified. And to get to the heart of the matter, you got to figure out who people are, right?
I think that's the case. You have to show the human side of it, and that's what you're trying to do, is bring the human side of it to politics, which is really interesting. Before we get into all that, I really wanted to highlight your origin. Like, how did you even get started as the political personality?
So I worked most of my life as a lobbyist. And what is a lobbyist? It's relationship building between the public sector and the private sector. And I did that for a number of years on Long Island and in New York City. And then when Mike Bloomberg decided to run for president at the end of 2019, his team recruited me to serve as regional director for Long Island for his presidential race. And that ended on March 4th. And then the pandemic hit on March 13th. Yeah. So as I like to say, I was unemployed and locked inside.
Yep.
And I turned to my phone of all my elected official friends and I said, will you join me on Zoom, this program that I downloaded for $14.99 a month? Remember?
New program.
Yeah. And I said, and everyone said yes. They joined me for 10 minutes each. And I said, what's going on? What are you doing with your staff? What are you hearing on the ground? What does it look like outside your office? What are you doing? What are you hearing?
Yep.
Because if you recall, like during that time, the news cycle was just Trump, Dr. Fauci. We had no idea how long this would last for. We initially thought it would be like 2 weeks.
Yep.
So there's a lot of misinformation. So I went to the hyper-local level to ask our hyper-local leaders what was going on. So all of a sudden I had 70 episodes within the first month.
Wow.
So then I worked with local newspaper companies who were traditionally print newspaper companies who didn't have a digital media vertical. And I said, these are the types of voices I can bring to your audience. Let's do some Zoom webinars. Let's engage the community in another way, which was digital media and social media.
That's interesting how you say you brought this up to the media companies who are just so, 2024, they should be up to speed, but yet you're now bringing this forum, this universe that's never before done. It's unprecedented, where you're engaging the community with the political figures in a more direct way that I think showcases a connection, correct?
Yeah, it's connection. Like you think back in the day, right? We used to get together historically in the public square, the town squares. Yeah. That's where we exchanged goods, services, and ideas. And now, where does that happen? It happens right here. The public social media is the public square. That's where people talk. You don't have to wait for a news reporter to attend a press conference and report on the story, file the deadline at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock news. It all happens right here. And anyone acts as a reporter these days. And that's how misinformation has been spreading. So it's all about engaging people and making and humanizing our leaders and bringing everyone to the same place.
I think that's very true because, I look at myself. I'm always going on X where I could see what's happening that moment.
Oh, yeah, X,
I mean,
not Twitter.
X, not Twitter. So I'm going on X to see what's going on, and you have the right people that are legitimate, that do actually have the correct information. They're the ones that are conveying to you immediately, like that, what's going on. And I find that fascinating to see how it's all transformed over the years. And for you, you're capitalizing it now on bringing that directly in a more humanized way, like you're saying. So was that always the intent for you when you developed the political personality? Like, was that always your intent, or it kind of just evolved?
It evolved based on what the community needs. I think we've gotten more divisive as a country and as a society, and even in New York City and across Long Island, right? Over the last couple of years.
I think that you're starting to see where people are shifting, and that's where people are migrating to different states or different regions of New York, where now you're having an influx. I mean, I think that's why you've seen Long Island become more Republican leaning, because many people from the city who are unhappy with certain politics were then coming and then into Long Island and then espousing the same ideals and interests. But nevertheless, it's interesting to see how what else is there to the candidate besides their political views. You know, what do they have to offer? What are their backgrounds? What's their interest? What their experiences? I mean, many times you don't know that, of how that shaped their ideals. And from when you were having those Zooms with all those elected officials, were they revealing those like unique information that only you were able to garner?
Yeah, because, recall that time, it was a very dark and lonely time. We were all stuck inside. We had no clue what was going to happen, and it went on for years. And it's hard to think back about those feelings, like feeling alone and at home and not knowing what was going to happen. We really felt like it was the end of the world. So one of the things I did to sort of bring light to the situation was I would get these people on the Zoom and ask them, tell me something that no one knows about you. Tell me something you're passionate about. Tell me something about your family life. Tell me a hobby of yours that you can share. And this turned into, like, in 2021, I put a call to action out. I said I would interview every single person who's running for office here in New York in 2021. So I did 450 Zoom interviews during that time with all these candidates. And people were like, how are you doing that? Well, I had no one to talk to. So it was like my absolute pleasure to book my calendar with like 14 Zoom interviews in one day, because I'm a people person. So I got to talk to all these people. But it was like, especially in New York City with there was a huge primary, like city council seats.
Oh, yeah.
There were 35 city council seats up out of the 51. And for each of those seats, sometimes there was a 13-way primary, and they're all Democrats. So how do we differentiate one from the next? Let's hear about something no one knows about. Beyond your policies, let's hear about your family. What are you passionate about? Where did you go to school? What sports did you play? What music do you listen to?
Yeah, that was a record year, too, with candidates in New York City specifically, right?
Yeah, that was. I mean, I did 450 Zoom interviews, but you're talking about city council, district attorney, mayor, borough presidents. Everyone was up.
Yeah. Wow.
And there was no way for people to meet these people.
So you
couldn't go to campaign fundraisers. You couldn't go to cocktail parties. You couldn't meet them at a networking breakfast. We were all stuck inside.
Yeah, that's incredible to see that ability. What were some of the unique interests that you learned about some candidates?
Well, your guy who took your seat after you in the assembly, Mike Durso.
Yeah, Mikey. What about him?
So he was a garbage man for 15 years before he was elected into office. And that doesn't typically come up. But what we did as an episode of my show after the world opened back up was he took me at 4:00 in the morning to the town of Oyster Bay Department of Sanitation. He gave me a garbage man outfit. And together we rode the garbage truck for him to explain what his life was like before he was elected and how he informs himself legislatively into his constituents as a blue collar guy that grew up servicing his constituents and residents across Long Island.
I think that's great. It shows you that, again, that's a side that nobody gets to see. And yet you were out there at 4 a.m.
I love that garbage outfit. And I actually wore it that year for Halloween.
Yeah,
so I was a sanitation worker for Halloween. So again, it's like bringing light to something when someone makes a comment, wow, you're a garbage man. Like, yes, there's actually an assemblyman who was a sanitation worker. This is the outfit. So it brings the conversation full circle, and people are like, "Wow, I never heard of that before."
Yeah, see, all new lessons, which is I think that's what makes it cool. And so, what is it like now? you just being this political influencer, talking about politics, bringing the community together. But what like is a day in the life? Because obviously you're riding apparently garbage trucks and throwing out some garbage. But besides that, what else are you doing on just a day-to-day level? The average person's going to work 9 to 5 or whatever it may be their shifts. But for you, it seems like it's all random.
Well, there's a lot going on, right, that the public isn't necessarily privy to. There's a lot of events, whether it's Association for Better Long Island, the Long Island Association, ABNY, like all these different organizations and associations. I was just up in Albany at the New York State Economic Development Council conference. There were 400 people there from across New York State, including dozens of elected officials and community leaders, people who lead IDAs. But if you're a member of the public, you don't know that these conferences are happening necessarily. So my role in attending these functions is to create social media content. I get people on camera. I get a 30-second soundbite talking about their business and how they work with these advocacy organizations to get their job done, to better their communities, and what they want the public to know about what they're doing in these roles with these organizations. And then these little sound bites go on social media where the people can consume it in the public forum here. And all of a sudden, people have a different understanding of how public-private partnerships work.
And it's done in a digestible way, so that they can understand, as opposed to something that might be cumbersome, lengthy, boring. You're making it more in an animated, dynamic, engaging forum, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, see, I think that's the key, because understanding how so many people, I think their lives are just so busy, and it's a matter of, okay, how do I make it where in your busy life you could say, what has been going on today, and they follow the political personality to say, okay, this is what's happening in my community, this is what's happening in my state or my area. But I also thought it's very interesting. You just interviewed a company that does insider trading tracking, right? Which is that's like something that is political, but yet kind of collateral to the whole environment of politics. What was that like? Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, so I was out in California and I met with the founders of Autopilot, which is known as the Nancy Pelosi Stock Tracker. They created all the coding, all the tech. They're tech bros.
Yeah.
They're tech bros. Two 28-year-old guys who created this concept to hook up your brokerage account to directly trade like Nancy Pelosi, but they have a whole bunch of different celebrities and influencers that you can follow, but a big chunk of their portfolio are politicians. So their issue, and I just learned about this through meeting with them, is that if a federal politician has insider knowledge, they can make a trade. They don't have to report it to the public for 45 days. So there's this time lapse. And if they don't report it at all, the fine is only $200. So theoretically, if someone has insider trading, makes a trade on the stock market, gains millions of dollars, and then doesn't tell anyone about it, they're only fined $200.
That's crazy.
So this company is calling attention to that.
Yeah.
And they specifically mentioned George Santos when we spoke together. So I let them know that I was the first person to get George on camera to admit to some of these alleged crimes after the New York Times story broke. But George was they said they called him legendary, that he was one of the only first or former elected to even admit that insider trading happens.
Wow. That's incredible. And so what? They follow how the market is going on average, and then how these elected officials are doing in their own portfolios.
Yeah, and then they can track it to the day or the second that it happened. So like they gave an example about Nicole Malliotakis and making a trade about Signature Bank. The whole concept, right? So the way that we aligned is about transparency. That's the theme. They're doing this to encourage transparency between elected officials and the public, just like I am having candid conversations about public officials' personal lives to encourage transparency with the public.
And I think, building off what you're saying with transparency, you created now in the room media.
Yes.
So how is that separate from the political personality? Is it overlap? Are they entwined? Can you talk more about in the room media and Skye's scoops that you release every week?
Yes. So the political personality is my Instagram handle. That's how I came up into this media world. It's sort of the voice of the brand, which is in the room media. And my newsletter is in the room where it happens. It comes out every Friday. It's political gossip, all good stuff. Who's talking to who's spotted where. it's fun for people in our universe.
It's good gossip. It's not like
good gossip.
It's not
It's
the
not
naughty
salacious,
gossip,
no.
salacious, anything like us at the bar.
Right.
Last night I saw so and so talking to so and so.
Yeah, it's good gossip. Nothing
Right.
too sexy or racy.
So now with the in the room media, how are you looking to partner or work with different organizations or companies to grow this business?
Yeah, so what I do is I work with the private sector. So it can be nonprofit organizations, corporations, different types of organizations that want to change things or get things done legislatively or politically to move the needle. And I work with them to create social media content surrounding those issues. So it's not lobbying because it's not a direct ask to public officials or to state agencies, but it's a conversation that includes the community. So it lets the public know that this is what this is this organization, this is what they want, this is what they're interested in, this is what needs to change, and sort of leaving it out there. How do you feel about this? So that the community can respond to some of these instances, which generates more traction. Like there's more traction there, right? Instead of, because historically, backroom deals with lobbyists, right? Dirty lobbyists, right? The notion of a lobbyist is that a lobbyist is someone that has backroom deals with public officials and their business clients, and that they do something whether or not the community is in favor of it. But now, being millennials and being on our phones and following social media, everything's right here. All the information is accessible. So the more the community knows, the better it is for them. Otherwise, they'll get out there and start canceling deals left and right. And we've seen that happen. The most famous example right here was the Amazon deal in Queens.
Amazon, and then also in Long Beach.
Long Beach with Equinor offshore wind. The community, some community went on there and said, oh, this is bad for the animals. This is bad for the whales. And the community canceled it.
Yeah, canceled. That's cancel culture
Cancel
right there.
culture,
That's
exactly.
Right there. Very interesting.
But it comes from social media.
It absolutely is.
Whether or not people are educated.
Yeah,
it's the loudest voices are the most extreme.
So that's where you are providing that conduit of education to build that great attraction among the community.
Yeah, the traction.
Yeah,
yes,
with the
education, traction, and
support. Yeah, I think that's awesome. And now coming up in Albany, there's the big Somos conference in March. Yeah. When is that?
The third weekend in March.
Right, the third weekend of March it's going to be, and you're going to be present. What is this Somos conference?
I mean, just like a lot of these conferences, like the EDC conference and now the Somos conference and caucus weekend, it's opportunities for businesses, nonprofits, again, the private sector to come showcase themselves in person to our public officials up in Albany. And there's tabling opportunities. There's a bunch of cocktail receptions, breakfast receptions, lunches, different keynote speakers from across the different state agencies with the speakers and the leaders. And it's an opportunity to exchange ideas. But again, there could be 4,000 people that go up for this Somos conference in March, but not a lot of them are regular public people. They're not voters. They're not constituents. They're not Long Islanders. Like, they tend to have stake in the game. So what I do, again, is I put the cameras in people's faces and in a lighthearted way have casual conversations about breaking it down. What are you doing here? What are you looking to achieve? How does this help you? How does this help us? And it sort of provides that transparency that people are looking for when it comes to social media.
Yeah, I think that's a neat perspective with that. So people shed light on Somos in general and just have a great understanding dealing with the connection between New York and then Puerto Rico is mainly what this revolves around. And many of those different industries and businesses and leaders that have a relationship with both and want to see those connections to grow. Which is the average person just doesn't even know. And now you're showcasing that. With growth itself, though, besides these individuals, in the room media, where do you want to see that to grow and become ultimately? Because this is within its first year.
Yes.
Where do you want to see that now kick off and springboard to?
I think that, again, in this theme of social media is the public forum. This is where the people are. Everyone wants to be in the room where it happens. The company in the room media will proceed in that direction. And I hope to work with many companies and organizations and nonprofits to amplify the excellent work that they're doing in the community and to also amplify the good work that our government does. Because, more often than not, people have nasty things to say about government spending, government officials, agency leaders, commissioners, when in fact they're doing so much good work that's drowned out by a negative narrative across the news and across social media. So that's what I hope to do, is amplify the positive so that we can bring our country, our city, and our state back together.
Do you want to work solely within New York City, the island, the state, or more than that?
Right now, I mean, I always say I have 18,000 people in my phone book. You know, and most of them are here in New York because I began doing this at age 22. I would go to the Long Island Association breakfast meetings downstairs in Melville at 8 a.m. You know, I would go to all of them, and that was more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And there weren't a lot of young people doing this, or a lot of females or young females doing this. So I've built these connections up over time. So most of my contacts are here in New York, but that doesn't mean that it can't spread beyond here. But I'd love to help us right here in the New York market.
I think it's wonderful. I hope businesses, organizations, nonprofits, associations, you're available to help each and every one of them connect with the communities and variety of projects or issues that they're focusing on. They can reach you on Instagram at The Political Personality. Where can they email you?
Yeah, Skye@intheroommedia.com.
Perfect. And for those of you, again, Skye Ostreicher at The Political Personality on Instagram, founder of In the Room Media. This has been a wonderful conversation.
That's
I look
it?
forward to seeing you absolutely crush it in the future. We've done a marvelous job. You've been wonderful. I look forward to seeing you grow.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Skye.